Today on our 2015 Dodge Durango, we're going to show you how to install the Airlift 1000 air helper springs. These are for the rear, designed to fit right into the coil springs. Part number is AL60824. Now the problem we hope to solve with the airbags is the vehicle squat that we get when we've got either a full load of people in the vehicle, the rear end kind of sags, maybe we're hauling a trailer. You'll see as we bring the weight down on, the rear of the vehicle is going to come down, causing that squat. Now with about 200 pounds of tongue weight there on the back of the vehicle, we've actually had about an inch of squat here in the rear. So this distance has been reduced quite a bit. What that does is it causes the top edge of the tire to tip in a little bit. That's going to give us uneven wear patterns on the inside edge of the tires, which can get expensive. Also, with that excess strain that we're putting on the rear suspension, it's required to do a lot more work. So with the airbags in there giving us that additional support, we hope to eliminate the sag that we have here. It's going to return our tire to the right position and also take some of that stress off the rear suspension. Another problem we can correct with airbags is bringing the front end of the vehicle back down. When you add weight to the rear, the front wants to come up. This has gone up about 3/8 of an inch. That changes the suspension geometry here in the front. It takes some of the weight off the tire, so our steering, our braking, and our handling, it's just not going to be the same. Also, the headlights tip up a little bit more, so that changes where they're pointed. It's going to change our field of view. So again, just like the rear, we should be able to get this back to where we started at our factory ride height, that we can keep all of our suspension geometries the same and get the weight back down on those front tires so we can haul safely. Now with the exact same load on the back of our Durango, you can see what a difference those airbags really make. Before we had about an inch of sag. Now our measurements within about 1/8 of an inch of where we started. This is taking all that excess pressure off the rear suspension. We're regaining our suspension travel, which will give us a smoother ride while towing. Now on the front, we've come right back down to where we started. This is going to get that suspension geometry back to where it was when it left the factory. It means we're going to get our even tire wear back. We've got the weight pushing back down on the front tires. That helps us out with our braking and handling. Now, not only are our handling characteristics going to be much more similar to factory when we're hauling this load, but since that vehicle's leveled out, our headlight angle is going to be the same as it was from the factory. That's going to allow us to see much better in front of us. All of these things put together are going to allow us to haul our trailer much more safely. Now let's take a look at our airbags installed. We're going to look at the driver's side here, and you'll see how it's going to make that correction. Our airbag, as we said, is going to fit right inside the coil spring, and with it inflated as you see it now, that's going to give us additional support. This would be right at our factory ride height. So as we start to load this and our spring wants to compress, our airbag is going to fight that. It has contact here at the upper spring mount and at the lower spring mount. So the pressure in that bag gives us the additional support. Now the bags are a durable polyurethane material, and they're going to give us about 500 pounds of additional support per side to help us level out our vehicle. Now one thing to keep in mind, our airbags aren't designed to increase our vehicle's safe load handling capability. These are designed to level out our vehicle so we can haul whatever our vehicle's rated at much more safely. Now you can see with the before and after side by side here, as we go through the slalom course, we're getting a lot less side to side body roll of our vehicle. As you can see here on our bumps course, it's a much smoother feel. The suspension isn't jumping up and down quite as much as it was before the airbags were installed. All of this is helping to take that strain off of our rear suspension, and from behind the wheel you definitely have a sense of more control. You feel the steering is more crisp and your braking is more effective. Now our installation is going to begin by clearing out some room to run our Airlines down out of the bottom side of our coil spring. That's right here, we're on our driver's side. This is that lower control arm that comes out, and this is where your coil spring is going to sit. It's just a circle here. Now in there you're going to see this insert. This is a black, kind of a hard plastic material, and it's going to have an X on it or a T there. And we need to cut that inside area out. So we need to get rid of both of those crossing areas. Now it's going to be about 2 inches thick. What we're going to use is a rotary bit, and we'll just go right up to the top and then kind of come down to cut those edges all the way around. And once that's cut, we should be able to just twist it a bit. We'll pull it out. Now up above where we just cut that out, there's going to be a rubbery diaphragm there. We're going to cut out about a 1-inch circle in the middle of that. Now you'll see our opening here. That's where our airline tube's going to come through. Now we'll head over to the passenger side and we're going to repeat the exact same process there. Now when you're ready to put your air spring into your coil, you're going to want to use a couple of jack stands. That'll allow our rear suspension to hang a little bit, which is going to expand that coil spring. It'll make our job easier to get this in. Now you're going to pull the little cover off the end here. And you need to fold this up kind of like a hot dog. So squeeze the air out of it. And once you've got most of that air out, we'll put that cap back on. It'll kind of help hold it there. Now it's time to start feeding it in. We'll want the part without the inflation valve to be upwards. And we'll take it in there on the lowest part of that coil spring. And we need to force it kind of up in that coil while we feed the rest in. Now once our airbag's fully inside of that coil, it's time to pull the cap off of the bottom, let it kind of go back to its original shape. Now on the bottom side of our airbag, we've got this protective cap that's going to fit in place. The air fitting will come through that middle hole, just like that. That'll be how it sits on the bottom. We're going to let that rest down for now. We're going to bring our airline up through the hole we created and through the hole in the middle of that. Like that. And then we need to press it onto the bottom of our airbag here. Now by placing that airline tubing in a little bit of warm water, you can make it a little bit easier to get it pushed up in position there. Kind of go over that barbed fitting a little easier. Now once we have that slid all the way up on that barbed fitting, just going to kind of pull down on that airbag a little bit, where it'll come down and rest on that spring seat. And you see once you pull that down a little bit, just kind of push those edges that you bent, it's going to go right back to its original shape. Now let's go over to the passenger side and we'll get that one installed. Now we've got our uni clamps that we need to slide up on our hose and over the barbed fitting. This is just going to give us extra protection and keep that airline from sliding off. We've got 2 tabs on one side, 1 on the other. Basically, you'll just squeeze those and you'll see how that's going to expand. So we'll slide that up and on. Now once we have our airlines installed to the bottom of the bags and we've got our uni clips in place, I just cut the hose right in half. We're going to start zip tying it in place. I'm using a little bit longer zip ties that come with the kit, so you might want to have some of those handy. And I want to start with a good anchor point right here on this lower control arm. I'm going to put just enough slack in it. As you can see here, my airline isn't making contact with this edge. You can see there's a little bit of a gap there. Now from there, I'm going to go up over this rear cross member. I'm going to take my slack so that it's up here, kind of by the rear of the fuel tank. I don't want to take all the slack out. Remember, this control arm is going to move, so we have to allow for some flexibility there. Then we've got the tube that runs along the back side of the fuel tank here. I'm going to put another zip tie there. Really just anywhere you can get a zip tie in a safe space. We have to avoid any sharp edges. We have to avoid any significant sources of heat and any pinch lines with our airline tubing, or we'll just be running it again once we put a hole in it. Now for our purposes, we're going to be heading right up this fuel filler neck up to where the fuel filler cap is. That's going to give us a pretty safe spot to get this mounted. Now for the driver's side, I'm going to use these two holes as my anchor point. And just like before, make sure you've got the slack you need so it's not rubbing on that sharp metal edge. Now we're going to install a T fitting to allow us to join both of our airlines together. So right up here behind the fuel tank will be a good area. Now we're using a tubing cutter. This is part number AL10530. Just gives us a good flush cut. And we'll take another one of our uni clips, slide up over our airline. We get our T slid up into position. Once that's in place, we'll bring our uni clamp down and over it there. Now we'll take the driver's side and we want to cut it to length, and we'll slide it on the other side of our T here. Now to install our inflation valve, we're going to go in the fuel filler door here. We're going to try for this edge, this front side. It's just going to make it an easy and convenient location to get to it when we do need to fill. So we'll come into the wheel well area. You're going to find in the wheel well a series of these push pin fasteners. What you're going to do is pull out the center section of it, kind of by prying out, and then you can go in behind the outside section, and that's going to be what we remove, just like that. Now we've got the one we just did. We're also going to have a second one, third one here, there's a fourth one here, and a fifth one here. Once those are removed, we should be able to move this fender liner back a little bit and gain access up behind that door. We can fold that down out of the way, be able to reach up. I can feel in that area we don't have anything really interfering. Now if you look down here on that front edge, you'll see the opening where that fuel filler neck comes down. That's right there where we have our T, so we should have a pretty straight shot. And we'll take our provided Schrader valve, and that's going to be slid into the part of the tubing that we cut off of the driver's side. Slide that all the way up on there, and now we'll bring one of our uni clamps up into place. Now we'll thread on one of the provided nuts. This is going to allow us to adjust how much of the Schrader valve is sticking out. We'll put a star washer on there. This will then be ready to slide through the hole that we're going to create now. Now if you plan on running dual inflation valves, which in this case won't serve much of a purpose, you'll want to drill 2 holes. Now we'll bring our valve up from behind, through the hole there. We'll place on our flat washer, and then another one of our nuts. Now if we hold from the back side, we'll be able to tighten that nut down. That's going to crush that star washer and give us a really nice secure fitting. Now the other end of that airline will run right down that hole by the fuel filler neck. Bring that down through, and then up here we're just going to tuck it over our fender liner there, and then start poking that in back behind the edge. Now it's time to go back around the edge and get our push pin fasteners put back in position. Now we'll have enough room to take our valve stem cap and just place that over top. Now where our airline comes out down here, we're going to zip tie it kind of right off to that fuel filler neck. Make sure we don't have any extra slack up in there that might come down. And then we're going to tie it into our T here. Now before we get that on our T, it's important to get our uni clamp in place because we won't be able to do it once it's on. All right, now we can pressurize the system and check it for leaks. Now one thing to keep in mind when you're inflating your airbags is that these require a lot less air than what a tire would, so you're going to get up to pressure much quicker. Now the maximum pressure our bags are able to withstand is about 35 pounds, so we'll get it pretty close to that. As you can see, we're about 32. Now we'll check all of our fittings, including the ones in the bottom of the bag, to make sure we don't have any leaks. Now once we have these sprayed down, we're going to let them sit for about 10 minutes, and what you're looking for are little bubbles to continually form. That indicates that you've got a leak. Now with no leaks detected, that's going to complete our installation of the Airlift 1000 air helper springs, part number AL60824 on our 2015 Dodge Durango.